Ryan, what's on your radar?
Well, so there'll be a lot of people offering up their takes today on what January 6th means, but I wanted to take this segment to do something radical. Just lay out a timeline. Whatever you think of January 6th, it's important to have some basic facts that we can agree on. So let's go through the undisputed ones. So Trump's first tweet on that day came just after midnight, where he lamented that things weren't going well in Georgia. Just happened to have found another 4,000 ballots from Fulton County. Here we go, he posted at 12:01 a.m. Over the next 10 minutes, he retweeted Kayleigh McEnany once and Tomi Lahren 3 times, all of them complaining about Georgia's Senate vote count. At 12:43, he quote tweeted this post, adding, "Get smart, Republicans, fight." 3 minutes later, he RT'd Christina Bobb, who claimed that Pennsylvania's electoral votes were going to go to Trump the next day, or I guess that day. A minute later, he retweeted Dan Scavino's video of the crowd in D.C. from the evening before, which could be heard from the West Wing. Let's look at that. So at 1 a.m., he posted, "If Vice President Mike Pence comes through for us, we will win the presidency. Many states want to decertify the mistake they made in certifying incorrect and even fraudulent numbers in a process not approved by their state legislatures, which it must be. Mike can send it back." And with that, he seems to have either gone to bed or stopped posting. He next surfaces at 8:07 a.m. and clicks over to MSNBC and says, "Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd is so happy with the fake voter tabulation process that he can't even get the words out straight. Sad to watch." 10 minutes later, he reminds Mike Pence again that he's been instructed to intervene in the coming process. States want to correct their votes, which they now know were based on irregularities and fraud, plus corrupt process, never received legislative approval. All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states, and we win. Do it, Mike. This is a time for extreme courage. Trump's idea there that if it goes back to the states lines up with advice he was getting in the so-called Eastman memo. Eastman argued that if enough states created enough doubt about which electors were valid, Pence could simply have the House vote state by state, and with the Republicans controlling more state delegations, Trump would win. At 8:22 a.m., Trump flipped on the all caps. The Republican Party and, more importantly, our country needs the presidency more than ever before. The power of the veto. Stay strong. By this time, it was pretty clear Ossoff and Warnock had won in Georgia, and Trump appears to be talking about the need for him to stay in office to be a check on a Democratic Congress. At 9 a.m., he went back to criticizing the Georgia Senate elections. They just happened to find 50,000 ballots late last night. The USA is embarrassed by fools. Our election process is worse than that of third world countries. At 9:15, he again urged Republicans to send things back to the states. The states want to redo their votes. They found out they voted on a fraud. Legislatures never approved. Let them do it. Be strong. At 9:16, he did, and even Mexico uses voter ID. At 10:45, he lamented that Republican David Perdue would lose to cheating Democrats in Georgia. He wrote, "These scoundrels are only toying with Senator David Perdue, a great guy. Just didn't want to announce quite yet. They've got as many ballots as are necessary. Rigged election." A bit later, he headed out to the crowd, addressing protesters at a Stop the Steal rally at noon, speaking for an hour plus. Here's how he ended.
Our brightest days are before us. Our greatest achievements still wait. I think one of our great achievements will be election security, because nobody until I came along had any idea how corrupt our elections were. And again, most people would stand there at 9 o'clock in the evening and say, "I want to thank you very much." And they go off to some other life. But I said, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can't have happened. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Our exciting adventures and boldest endeavors have not yet begun. My fellow Americans, for our movement, for our children, and for our beloved country, and I say this despite all that's happened, the best is yet to come. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give. The Democrats are hopeless. They're never voting for anything, not even one vote. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I want to thank you all. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all for being here. This is incredible. Thank you very much.
So by let's walk and by we, he did not literally mean us and we, and he instead headed back to the White House. By that point, protesters had already arrived at the Capitol and were trying to force their way in. At 1:12 p.m., Paul Gosar and Ted Cruz began the process of objecting to the electoral votes of Arizona. Trump didn't post again on Twitter until 1:50 p.m., putting up a Periscope link to his speech. At 2:15, with cameras broadcasting the chaotic scene live, protesters breached the Capitol itself. At 2:24, Trump posted what was read in the Capitol as encouragement to keep pushing. He tweeted, "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth." At 2:39, with friends and allies pushing him to call for an end to the violence, he posts, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." His son, Don Jr., then texted Mark Meadows, Trump's chief of staff, quote, "He's got to condemn this ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough." Meadows responded, "I am pushing it hard. I agree." Trump's Twitter fingers went silent until 3:13, an hour after the Capitol had been breached and 34 minutes after his previous post. He again spoke out against the assaults on the officers guarding the Capitol, but didn't call for anybody to leave, writing, "I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you." Right around that time, Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed. Shortly after 4 o'clock, Joe Biden went on television.
But all of you have been watching what I've been watching. At this hour, our democracy is under an unprecedented assault, unlike anything we've seen in modern times. An assault on the citadel of liberty, the Capitol itself. An assault on the people's representatives and the Capitol Hill police, sworn to protect them, and the public servants who work at the heart of our republic. An assault on the rule of law like few times we've ever seen it. An assault on the most sacred of American undertakings, the doing of the people's business. Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are. What we're seeing are a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness. This is not dissent, it's disorder. It's chaos. It borders on sedition. And it must end now. I call on this mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to go forward.
At 4:17, at least 2 hours after the Capitol had been breached and at least 3 hours after clashes had begun, Trump released this video.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Over the next hour and a half, the Capitol was cleared. At 6:01, Trump tweeted, "These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever." At 8:06 p.m., the Senate reconvened.
When it's over, it is over. It is over. The final thing, Joe Biden. I've traveled the world with Joe. I hoped he lost. I prayed he would lose. He won. He's the legitimate president of the United States. I cannot convince people, certain groups, by my words, but I will tell you by my actions that maybe I, above all others in this body, need to say this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are lawfully elected and will become the president and the vice president of the United States on January the 20th.
And so from there, Ted Cruz again objected to the certifying of the electoral votes. It took many hours, but by the early morning, they had gavelled it through, and Joe Biden was declared the president-elect and sworn in on January 20th.
That's the timeline.
That is the timeline. About 3 hours from the time that clashes began until he finally posted his video saying, "Okay, guys, go home."
Yeah. So the conservative, not defense, because there's no defense of this, but the conservative response has been that, you know what, there was a summer of widespread violence and destruction in major American cities where police were attacked, cars were set on fire, government buildings were occupied, stores were looted, just mobs of violence, and it was condoned by liberal and Democratic political leaders, not by Joe Biden, but by others, and this is what you got. That's the conservative kind of, which I don't know. I also was strongly against a lot of that. I was sickened and disgusted by it. I actually saw a lot of continuity between how the police in D.C. handled the BLM rioters and how they handled the Capitol rioters, because I followed some of those protesters around, the BLM people, and the police mostly didn't do anything. At Lafayette they did, but most of the time they kind of hung back and they just watched the windows get smashed, and they didn't really interfere. And then then if somebody got then they came in and grabbed someone, then they overreacted. But mostly they just kind of let it happen, which is exactly what happened at the Capitol. So people talk about this, why did the police who are so violent, normally they just, because they were aligned, this is now the left talking, or the liberals talking, well, they were aligned with the insurrectionists, so they just let them come through. Like, no, they just don't really do anything in any case.
Well, that was an initial report, like, from that day, which turned out to be untrue. It was based on one little video of, like, some police moving, like, one little gate.
Right.
While elsewhere there were just, extremely violent clashes going on.
Right. There was very little the police could have done in the moment. There were not enough police.
Once they had not put enough police there,
to stop this. So unless you're going to start, like, shooting people, which is not something anyone thinks.
Right.
Virtually no one says you should be able to just start shooting people.
That would have ended very badly for everybody.
Would have ended very badly. So there's nothing they could do.
Right. And I know we're going to talk about this more on your radar coming up next.